Before we start, I just want to say, how much I've appreciated the comments on the videos in the last 2 or 3 days. Obviously, we've had the normal comments, which have been about the subject matter at hand, be it West Ham buying and selling players, so on and so forth. But there's also been quite a few funny comments on there, which I've really enjoyed. There's been some good banter, some good interactions between people. It's been good fun. So you're clearly a lot of very funny people who watch the videos, and there's a few of a very dry sense of humour. It doesn't go unnoticed. It's very much appreciated. By the way, the other thing I just wanted to thank you for was all the existing patrons and all the new people who have just signed up to Patreon since myself and Gio did the video a few days ago, something like that. It's really appreciated. From a personal point of view, it gives us an extra income, and my job in particular has gone from what was full time, doing plumbing, bathroom fitting, stuff like that before coronavirus, to now part-time for the foreseeable future. For details, I'll go in a later date. Suffice to say that the support and the sponsorship and the help that that goes into the channel from the patron, is really, really helpful. Helps us do this, helps us do videos, and just keeps things ticking over. So we're gonna very much pay you back with content. Just from now going forward, forevermore, basically. So thank you very much for that. The subject at hand today is the Premier League had a meeting, as you know. I think they had a meeting on Thursday, didn't they? And the information started to get drip fed from the meeting itself. We know about the substitutions, but the other thing that's sort of come out that took my notice today was that they still want to. They're not invoking a new rule. They just want to reiterate that this rule still stands and is still pertinent, and that rule is that teams must field their strongest possible side. As I say, not a new thing, but they feel the need to confirm it, to reiterate it, to rubber stamp it a second time, just to let everybody know, play your strongest team. Why? Well, because they're worried about the integrity of the competition. It's a bit after Lord Mayor's show on that one. The integrity of the competition has gone anyway because of the rule changes, because of the massive gap, because of everything that's happened. Not saying it's particularly anyone's fault, but the integrity of the competition has gone. Now, there's enough difference anyway with the empty stadium and things like that. But what they're saying is, please play your strongest team. Now, I touched on this before, but it's probably a couple of months ago now, and it was about the amount of mid-table teams that you have in the running. So I think previously, as it got to the end of the season and clubs were aware that they were safe, the intensity would tail off a little bit, if you see what I mean. I think that is going. That's going to be even more pronounced now. That's going to be even more defined than it was before. And I've had a little look, and there are a number of clubs bunched in the middle of the Premier League who ain't going to get relegated and who ain't qualifying for Europe. Now, normally, as I say, those teams would tail off. I think even more so, though. And the reason being is because we've had this massive gap. Because those clubs probably wouldn't have been so keen as to finish the season as some of the other clubs, particularly the clubs that want to go for Champions League, the clubs that want to avoid relegation, the clubs who, if one of these mathematical schemes was implemented and you get relegated through maths, basically, with no games being played, those clubs don't want that. And Aston Villa don't want that. Aston Villa want the chance to play games of football, to win games of football, and to stay in the Premier League on merit. So teams like Aston Villa, teams like Sheffield United, West Ham, it depends. Well, we'll go with Aston Villa, Sheffield United. They want the season played out to its conclusion. Teams like Crystal Palace, Burnley, Southampton, not so much. I know the Crystal Palace chairman, Steve Parish, said, yeah, let's get the show back on the road. And that's very much in terms of revenue. But I'm talking about actually wanting to play games from a player's perspective. And I think even more so, those players are going to be playing a paint-by-numbers football. They're going to be going through the motions, very, very, very much so. Because it's going to take an extra sort of force of will and an extra force of character to to perform to the same level of intensity, bearing in mind the surroundings are going to be so different. There's no crowd in there would be the big one. So you're really relying on the coaches, on the managers, to really, and the captains, maybe to a lesser extent, to instill in the players the importance of the game, to G them up. They're not going to walk out onto the pitch and have the hairs on the back of their necks sticking up and tingling like they would when you walk out and the crowd starts singing Bubbles or whatever the case may be. So without that natural intensity, with you needing the coaches and the managers to inject some intensity, how much is going to be injected? How much is Roy Hodgson going to inject into Crystal Palace? How much is Steve Bruce injecting into Newcastle? Sean Dyche into Burnley? Not as much as Chris Wilder is going to be injecting into. I don't know why I keep saying injected, by the way. Infusing? No. You get what I'm saying, right? Just, you're going to need to do a terrible job of this. My point is the mid-table teams ain't going to be up for it as much. Let's look at the run-ins, okay? Because I think this is key. Watford are playing Norwich, Newcastle, Burnley and Southampton. So I think Watford have got 4 winnable games there. They play us, I know, we'll get to that in a minute, okay? Aston Villa are playing Palace, Everton and Newcastle. So Villa immediately have 1 less winnable game by my own estimations than Watford do. Now they also do have a game in hand, which we know, but are Palace, Everton, Newcastle going to be as intense as Aston Villa during those games? No, I don't think they are. Aston Villa really desperately need to stay up. Palace, Everton, Newcastle don't really desperately need to do anything. They might not even, I say desperately need to stay up. They might not even particularly want to turn up. You've got Bournemouth, who are playing Southampton, Everton, Palace and Newcastle. Newcastle is key because they're playing Newcastle at home. That's a big journey from Newcastle to Bournemouth. Because I do think that's going to play into it. Newcastle, who probably, they're safe anyway. They don't particularly want to play out the season. Probably looking forward to next season if they do ever get taken over. Do they want the long coach journey in a confined space down to Bournemouth? Probably not. So Bournemouth have 4 easier games. One of them, I think, particularly easy. Brighton are playing Norwich, Southampton, Newcastle and Burnley. They have 4 as well. Which brings us to West Ham. And West Ham have Newcastle away. For the reasons that I gave why it was in Bournemouth's favour, I don't think that rests particularly well for us. Burnley and Norwich. We have 3 winnable games in that. I look at us, I look at Aston Villa, and I think actually we have the tougher run-ins here, and that ain't good. Because what that's going to need for us to do one or 2 things. Either we do something unexpected against whatever, Wolves, Chelsea, Tottenham, Man United, pick your team. Or, and I'm banking on us winning those games, Newcastle, Burnley, Norwich. And here's the big one, because, well, I say the big 2, because we've got to play Watford and we've got to play Aston Villa. And I know I'm not coming up with any particular new information here. If I turn round to you now and I say, we may well have to beat Aston Villa on the last game, you turn around and say, well, of course. Is it taking you 10 minutes to tell us that? I know, and that's been thought for some time. But the more I look at it, I do think the landscape's changed because of the gap in football. I really do think those mid-table teams would have taken their foot off the pedal to some extent anyway. I think now they've almost taken their foot off the pedal. I think they've taken their foot off the pedal. They've put the car into neutral, pulled on the handbrake and got out the motor. That's what I think may well be happening here. I mean, Norwich is a funny one because a few of the teams play Norwich. You may well feel that Norwich, oh, well, Norwich going to fight. Well, whatever. It should be an easier game. It won't be long before Norwich are mathematically down. But the games against Watford and Aston Villa are crucial because I do feel that just winning against Newcastle, Burnley and Norwich ain't going to be enough. I just don't think they are. Looking at the numbers in the table, I think what we're going to do, if West Ham are going to basically avoid relegation, what we're going to have to do is beat one or both relegation rivals or beat a big team.